topic for me. It's a topic that's been on my mind for so many years. And the topic we touched on, when we shared with each other about woodworking, but a topic that's not, I haven't seen it addressed head on or more overtly. Something I'd like to give a bit more space to. And then last year, well, after the event last year, Jason and I were talking about this year's, and then when he came up, I think after he fell off the roof, he thought maybe healing is a good theme for this year's event. Last year was Beginner's Mind, and then we hinted at that with a few things at last year's event, and being the first one at a new location, it was a good theme. And then this year, healing seemed like a good theme after what happened to him in the winter. And when he put that out, I was thinking, there's this topic that we always kind of hint at, but don't talk about in more depth. And it's you could call it the spiritual aspect. Spiritual because coming from spirit, soul, so mind, body, emotions, feeling, and then there's an underlying other aspect that you can do woodworking without paying attention to, and that's fine. It won't necessarily affect your woodworking, but if you have interest in giving it some space, there's a lot of benefits. So I thought, maybe I'll do that. I'll talk about that. And then ever since I've been thinking about it until just a few minutes ago, still kind of editing that. Well, maybe don't talk about it. So I'll talk a bit about what a practice, woodworking as a practice may look like. Of course, it's an individual thing, so there's as many variations as there are people. But I will share some of my own experience and reflection about that. And more or less the last 20 minutes, maybe more or less, we'll see how this goes. I'd love to have more of a discussion, so questions. Not that I have necessarily answers, but it's worth a shot. Question. And so the little info blurb that I provided to Jason was, is woodworking a job? Is it a fun hobby? Is it about making stuff? And then if you wonder, might there be more, then this is the more stuff is what we're going to focus on. So I guess for me, the exploration of that aspect of woodworking that started by when I was looking for an occupation that I could have an integrated life with. I was looking for something to do that at the time I was calling creative. Later it became, it had different meaning. But I was looking for something that wouldn't be separate from the rest of my life. Now that I have a job, and then I have hobby, and then I have family life, and then I have all these fragments of life. I was looking for something that could just engage me also on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I didn't have a word for, I didn't use spiritual at the time, but that was pointing in that direction. And my closest approximation was actually something creative. Later it became something more like, how can I incorporate intuition in my work? And And then by now it's, it is kind of cliche, but it is the spiritual nature of the work, that aspect that runs through the work. So some personal struggles. Broadly speaking, too much thinking. That became apparent. It started to work. So other thing. So for years, I learned largely on my own. So it's a lot of being by oneself and trying to work it out and looking up Toshio Datu's book and trying to do the same as what says in the book. And then later on, when I did become an apprentice, and I apprenticed for 9 years in Seattle, Washington. And that had its own challenge. Learning on your own is one thing, and that has its value and its challenges, and then learning around or from someone who has much experience also has its set of challenges and benefits. Not everybody has the chance to apprentice, but by starting to pay attention to what's going on other than is it working or not? Is my cutting straight? And how to fix that. There's another dimension you can tune in that can help you make better cuts, do smoother work, do faster work, and it is to check in with your whole being, where physically, where you're at today, emotionally, where you're at, where's your mind at, is your mind too busy, should that just be quiet down a bit. And working on my own, I started to notice how those things affected my work, and was trying to make some adjustments. But because I was working on my own, I also could ease the pressure in different ways. When I became an apprentice, I didn't feel at the steering wheel anymore. Somebody else was calling the shot, and I had to just follow and do the best I could, which never seemed good enough, fast enough. And then over time, and even though my teacher boss was I felt very fortunate. He was very compassionate, and his teacher had been very different with him, and my teacher had decided, I'm going to let the wood do the teaching. I don't need to make a point of making you feel this way or that way. The wood will do the work. I just provide the opportunity. That was his setup. I still had all my own issues, so I struggled a lot. And I struggled a lot with nothing is ever good enough and fast enough. Day after day, after week, after month. Emotionally, it was really tough. Because I was still looking for something outside to feel okay about, feeling good about myself. If this turns out well, then I'm okay. Well, it rarely turned out well, so I felt pretty bad. And over time, it's like, this is getting really old, it became more and more apparent that it was going to be years before, if I followed this pattern, it was going to be years before I could let myself feel like I'm okay. You know, I might not make it that long. You know, because it was also very, even though it was on an emotional level, it was physically draining. You know, I was losing so much energy just feeling like whether self-pity and that sort of, you know, not letting myself actually enjoy more because the work wasn't good enough. So in dealing with this, one way I made peace with was that finally, it's layers and layers, but starting to be okay with where I was at and separate that from who I am. I could be a person, and the level of quality of my work was a separate thing. But still, I wanted to have some drive to keep doing better work and keep learning and keep progressing. So what would be that, you know, on the day-to-day, I wanted to do that and have somewhat of a goal, orientation, and at the same time be able to feel satisfied at the end of every day. It couldn't be about how well the work turned out, because day after day it was just never that great. So well, I started noticing when I just gave it all I had in a day, and I just really could not have given more, well, what else could I have done? The way things turned out is a little bit out of my hands. I gave it all I had. And then I would notice on the drive home, like, okay, actually this feels really good. Yeah, this joint, that thing, the flaming, still a lot of improvement. But I gave it everything I had. That felt really honest. That I did everything I could. And I'm still where I am, so if I knew everything, I wouldn't be doing this. And, you know, it's, so, and I know why that had been so. I wanted to learn so much before becoming an apprentice, so that maybe I didn't have the shame of not knowing in front of somebody who knows. Right? Yeah. When spoken, it's like, oh, I wish I could talk to that. It's okay. That's actually the point of being an apprentice. You're there to learn. You're not expected. If you knew already, it'd be weird if you were there. It would only be to feel good about yourself. Like, oh, look what I can do. Well, if you can do it, then go do it. This is learning. You should have just run your own business. So, in starting to notice, all right, I can hold on to this as an anchor, giving it all I have. And then how would I do that? How can I increase the amount I can give? And because it was going to be day after day, week after week, month after month, and probably years to come, I couldn't just muscle my way through and then crash after each day and then hope that with enough sleep and caffeine that we can go through another day and then crash. It's not very sustainable. For a short time, maybe. But if you want to do this for a lifetime and then never retire, maybe for me, I had to make some adjustments. And the more balanced I felt, the more I felt I could give. And the more I could give, the better I felt. Regardless the physical outcome of the physical quality of the work, I knew I could feel good and honest at the end of the day. So then for me it meant to sleep enough, because it's not just for tomorrow, it's for years ahead. Yeah. And food also, yeah. Whatever suited me best, I started to migrate towards that, and it kept adjusting over time. And then I also meditate, and it's really helpful to also regulate emotions, if you will. Yeah. Not as high, not as low, more even in the middle. Work itself helps that if you get quiet and just focus on the work. But I had started to meditate years before, and I just kept that up. That was also a good anchor when I would start thinking too much or be too involved in feeling, attaching to how this project is turning out as to who I am. To have somewhere else to go and develop a sense of self that's not attached to what I do and how well I do it, became really important. Yeah, and it took years and years until I had even a glimpse of, oh, that's what they were talking about. Know thyself. Yeah, that thing. It's not about like, I like grapefruit and this tall and this, and I like these things and I'm good at that thing, and all those things that at first, I constructed, my mind had constructed a sense of self around those things that were all constantly moving. So not very anchored. So as an apprentice, it was very challenging. And when things are hard, is when you look for some anchor, something that's not going to move, something that can see you through. And so developing that practice of having a balance to be able to give as much of myself as I could, because that in itself became a practice. How can I do that? And then incorporating anything I would come across. If I felt guilty to be out at watching a dance performance because I should have been sharpening. Well, to make that okay, what can I use in what I'm watching in my work to make it better? They move really gracefully. Maybe there's something there. They are masters at what they're doing. No different than my teacher. What's the commonality? And then how can I try to emulate that? That sort of thing. Really making no distinction between drinking a glass of water and him playing. What's the commonality? Yeah, so in time working harder became being more present. Not harder this way, but just approaching the work with full being. And as much as possible, also leave the mind aside. Only needed for something. It's so busy. Or can be so busy. So slowing down, actually, in a way, slowing down made my work go faster. Slowing down the mind, getting that out of the way. It's too slow, anyways. If you're trying to move fast, the mind is too slow. I think in a recent podcast, Matt is not here yet. Anyway, Matt Connaughton, we got into talking about, he used to race motorcycles. And we were drawing parallels between woodworking and racing. And how he says, yeah, when you go that fast, can't be thinking. Thinking is too slow. You have to tune into something else to go fast. It gets in your head, you'll make a mistake. Really.
I don't even know yet. It's rare type of wood chestnut. All the chestnut you get
Now, in the practice of woodworking, one thing I really enjoy is that there's no opinion. Things fit or they don't fit. It's sharp or it's not sharp. It's of course a different level of sharpness. But when you're trying to achieve a certain task, it becomes very clear if it's sharp enough for that task or not. And a lot of the time, it's you and the wood. There isn't another person to discuss opinions. So, well, that's got its own, debating has got its own value. But the very honest feedback, it's not lying to you. The wood doesn't have any agenda. Even though as a much younger man, I thought this piece of wood had something personal. Right? Yeah, it was just like, you're standing struggling. But I would start the fight. And in time, I learned that because I start the fight, I can also end the fight. It doesn't need to be fighting. I'm making the whole thing. That piece of wood is just sitting on the bench.
I'm guessing that piece of wood is hemlock.
Hemlock is a great teacher. If you can learn to love hemlock, you come a long way. So little by little, it became obvious that I had to adjust. The piece of wood is just going to sit there and do its thing. It's more honest than I am. I'm trying to be I'm trying to portray something I'm not. Yes, okay, I'm not there in skill yet. That's fine. And I'm learning. But if I don't accept that I'm not better than I am yet, then issues. Right. Because I'll be resisting, saying this shouldn't be happening. Clearly it is happening. So maybe I should pay more attention to that than what I wish was happening. Yeah, and this, as I mentioned earlier, great if at some point, if you wish to become an apprentice here or in Japan or really anywhere, it's great. The value of it is amazing, but it won't suit everybody. Not so much the apprenticeship itself, but you may not find an opening. You may not want an opening. You may have a well-paying job, and you do this for fun on your spare time. Perfectly fine. You can still gain the same thing through woodworking, through that feedback you get from the wood. Yeah? And planing is one specific aspect, but all aspects of working with wood can give you the same feedback. When things are not working well, you go back to tuning. So with the plane, it's a great example where it's not planing well, go back through the plane. Is it sharp enough? Is it the body tuned well? Is it breaker if you're using it? Is that working well? And you go down the list and then go back. Okay, what is the condition of the wood? Any resistance is a hint that something is not quite right. So you find that in woodwork, and then you find that sometimes the resistance, you made the resistance. So you can, whether you're apprenticing to somebody or to yourself, you can make use of those hints. Oh, I need to adjust something. I'm only so big, so I can only muscle through so much. And then I gave myself injury by resisting too much. Both wrists, I could not bend all the way back because I had held on so tightly to the plane. Resisting resharpening. Resisting, I need to do something more to it. If I just take another shaving and another shaving, and if I just press harder, well, yeah, eventually I couldn't do this. Could only bend to about here. And I want to keep doing this work for a long time. I need to do something about this. So yeah, there is a concept in Hinduism that's called Upaguru. It's a couple ways to describe it. Everything can be your teacher, and also you can be your own teacher. You are part of it. So whether you're learning from someone or on your own, it's really helpful to start tuning into that. Cutting tomatoes can help your woodwork improve if you're paying attention to the subtleties of what's happening when it's working well. You can translate that right into if your relationship with your spouse is not working, that's helpful there. And if your mortise and tenon is not tight enough, you can use it there. If you pay attention and you are open to anything and everything can be your teacher. And integrated life. Everything together. And then some hints that things are working well. There's some obvious hints. If you put a joint together and it's a nice fit, it's easy. And there are things that are not quite as obvious. Sawing straight. Yeah? Or really anything, even planing. At a distance, with a little practice, you'll be able to tell the level of expertise of anybody planing. And I can't see the shaving from here, but I can see how they move. Just like a dancer, that even though the movement might not be technically graceful, if there's an effortlessness to it and a grace, that person has real skill. And in any discipline, you find that. So it's hard to see oneself working, but you can feel yourself working. When is it easy? When is it effortless? So the more of that, the more you're in that sweet spot. Always looking for the sweet spot. And if anybody yesterday was hewing with Yama-san, I'm sure you heard that word sweet spot several times. It's the same. Not too tight, not too loose. There's a sweet spot there. You find it in everything. I mentioned the word meditation. It's kind of a big topic. It's my experience has been very misunderstood by onlookers when doing woodwork. Often people would come up to a demonstration, or if we're working in a public setting, once in a while somebody will come over and they'll say something like, "Oh, it looks like a meditation." And because of the typical assumption. And then very quickly often they'll say like, "Oh, this looks like it takes so much patience. I could never do that. I don't have any patience." Well, I don't have any patience. I have zero patience. As soon as I have to wait for something, I become incredibly uncomfortable. It's my least favorite thing. And I usually, even now, I'm saying like, people are waiting, so yeah, but wait, you seem patient. What's that? Because I'm not waiting. I do my best to be present. And if I'm only here now, from the outside, it looks like I'm waiting. But it's not waiting. Otherwise I'd be agitated because I like to wait for anything. And then the meditation thing is when often when people will say, "Oh, it looks like a meditation," that what they are saying usually is something like, "Oh, it looks like it's moving slowly and kind of almost daydreaming at the same time." And like, work is nothing like this. I mean, it's intense, it's focused. It's focused. And when you're focused from the outside, it doesn't look like you're straining. So it looks more effortless than not. And so from the outside, lacking those words, one may come up with like, "Oh, it looks like a meditation." From the inside, the experience is that yes, in one way, but probably not what you're thinking about. The meditation I practice is uses a mantra, it's the meaningless word. And the practice is very simple. Is that every time you realize your mind has taken off, you just come back to the mantra. And then they'll pick up again. And it's just bring it back. Yeah. Sharpening is very much a metaphor for that also, a parallel. When it's the first thing usually to check when working, when you start having some struggle, it's worth checking. Oh, when is the last time I sharpened? I'm not trying to milk this blade too long. The longer you wait, the more struggle becomes up to you. And so, going back to sharpening, going back to tuning, refreshing, having a good night's sleep, eating well, with that all reset, start again, and you go on, reset. And the quicker you can reset, the more you can stay in that sweet spot. It is really sweet. You get really quiet, work, move, unhindered. Once you have a taste of that, you always want to go back to that. For Westerners like myself, one of the biggest hindrances has been having a mind in a Western, having a Western mind. It's always so ready for me. always so ready to give some thoughts, some input, and kind of getting in the way any way it can, because it's for me anyway, this little entity that's trying to get attention can be very distracting. For a long time, I would just listen to it as if there was no difference between me and my mind. And then little by little, started to realize, oh, actually, there is a me that's not my mind. So maybe I can use my mind rather than it use me. And one of the places it came up is getting caught up in that concept of best. What is that? You know, am I being compulsive about the best tool, the best work? And it's great to try to do great work. But being compulsive, then something else is running the show, not you. In my case, anyways. So that's something that came up that give some attention to that. Another blind spot I had. It's still there from time to time. It's a very alluring concept. Best is also very isolating. Best is only one person. If you want kinship, best is very much isolating. Great. We can all be great. Only one person can be best. So.
That's what you typically like. Yeah. And like I said, things aren't good.
Does any of this resonate with anybody?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Does anybody have questions?
I'm just sitting here curious about how as you were evolving your mental and kind of spiritual approach to that, how did you see your actual work evolving? What was going on there?
Yeah. It's back to wood, your work is not being a matter of opinion. You can get honest feedback. As honest as you want it to be. In fact, I would say. The more honest I was with myself, the better the work became. Not necessarily technically perfect, but the feeling of the work changed as I changed. My early work was so overworked. It might look good, everything is tight, but it lacked crispness, it lacked directness. It was very overworked. Everything must be just so. And then in the end, there was still something like, it's not alive. It could be so much more alive and crisp, and maybe less technically perfect, but so much more pleasing to be around. The teacher I studied with had he would never sign his work. He had a few kind of signature details, but hardly. I could tell his work because you would just find yourself smiling in his presence. That's his energy embodied in the physical object. So after noticing that, I said, oh, how can I improve myself to be able to put out that sort of feeling in a piece. Yeah. And so over time that's changed. And then maybe a short story about as an apprentice, not making the calls anymore had its own struggle because I had been a freelance woodworker for at least 6 years before becoming an apprentice. So I got used to, I love going and shopping for wood and meeting clients and then doing the work and all that. And so some of those things were not present as an apprentice. And at first I missed them, but then there were other challenges enough to be very engaged, so that was fine. A great benefit is that I would be asked to do things, and I wasn't asked if I want to do this or not. I was like, here's the next task. And one particular project was really tight budget. We still had so many shojis to make. And I was very specifically instructed, 3 passes with a plane. However it turns out, move on. Like, oh my gosh. It was unnerving on one hand, but on the other hand, it was so freeing. It's like, okay, I'll give it my best, and it won't really matter. And I mean, I don't know. He's asking me to do this. Like, I don't know how this is supposed to work. Like, it's not gonna be great. Like, there's gonna be rough here and polish there, and like, I don't. But again, it's not my call. My job was to do the best I can, and then move quickly because we have a lot of these to do, and I put them together. And then I step back and I'd be like, this is some of my best work. It was so fresh, so crisp, so direct. Overall, fine. It's not like the joints were like loose and things were falling apart. But it wasn't the best it could be. But on a feeling level, they were so great. Yeah, so that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually relates to my question. So on our job site, the saying is, perfection is the enemy of done.
Done or good. But yes, done, definitely.
And I guess, how do you balance that? Obviously the boss is the arbitrator of how fast things are going. But as the carpenter, you have to decide, is it good enough? It's not my best, but
Well,
is it good?
that's a large part of your job, is to stay focused on one task and at the same time zoom out and put that in context. What are we building? My very first teacher, cabinet making teacher, he would tap you on the shoulder and say, "We're not building a piano." Oh, okay. And try to give you some perspective. Sometimes you are building a piano, and you should keep that focus. But it is, well, that's it. It's just here. When I say here in North America, typically you get known for the level of quality you do. You know, if you want quick and dirty, you go see this guy. If you want fair, but fair in all ways, you see this person. And if you want the best work, you go see that person. In Japan, as like a village carpenter, you are expected to accommodate a range of budget. I mean, you can only do so cheap. That's same everywhere. There are limits to it. And no really limits on the other end. but really there are, because there'll be a budget limit. very unusual to have no budget. It means it's rare. It does happen, but it's so rare. Not everybody gets one in their lifetime, so it's that rare. But there's a huge range in the middle. And so you pick materials and then how much time you have to spend on them according to that level of quality you're trying to hit. And within that, especially if it's a building, it's more obvious on a building than a piece of furniture. On a building, not every stick gets the same treatment. It's inside the closet. Run as fast as you can. It should still be clean, but this is not the entrance. So there's that also. I don't know if that answers your question. You have to constantly stay tuned in to the bigger picture while doing the small tasks. The idea of, because you're working on a temple, every single operation is done with the same quality and the same speed. It's a concept, it's a mental concept that we have. Most things have a backside. Or two, yes. Yeah, so context is everything.
You spoke a little bit about how the relationship between things outside of your work, like going to a dance performance, for example, came back and played a part in your work and the honesty of your work. Would you mind speaking a little bit about how, like, the other side of that reciprocity worked for you? Like, what the development of honesty in your work then brought back to, like, the people that you live with, or the community that you're a part of?
So I have a 6-year-old daughter. In many ways, it made me feel like I'm right back at the beginning. Why won't she listen? And yet, I mean, I was fairly old when she was born. I can't imagine having done this in my mid-20s. But plenty of people do it, and it's
You don't think about it.
You work it, I mean, you work it out. But even as wise as I was, it didn't feel very wise a lot of the time. And yet, there are many things as older, wiser people we could do. But I remember sharing with my teacher how much I benefited as a parent from having gone through that learning. He was surprised, I don't know why. He doesn't have kids. Maybe that's why. He's like, oh yeah, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the time spent there. Because I'm using so much of that in parenting. I'm still not patient, but I know how it feels to be present. And in my experience, limited experience, so much of parenting is being present and not wishing the situation is something else than it is. The same with, my daughter does what she does. She doesn't have it in for me. She's not after, she's doing what she's doing. I need to adjust. She's not in a position to adjust. So I need to adjust. And when I can do that, things move along as smoothly as parenting can do. So yeah, that's one example.
As you described the spiritual journey you know, for lack of a better term, from, you know, when you started to apprentice to now, right? And it's like what you look at in other people's work and what you kind of appreciate as part of their journey kind of changed over time.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. I think it's a huge generalization, but as you change, everything seems to change around you, even though it probably hasn't, but your perception is changing. Yeah. Things, yeah, in people's work and in my perception of how they go about things also has changed quite a bit. Two of my teachers, the man who introduced me to the tools, and then the man I apprenticed with, I was around them at a fairly young age, you know, a young man, arrogant, clueless, trying to be something I wasn't yet. Right? Some of their biggest strength I perceived as weaknesses. Their kindness I misperceived. Their flexibility, their willingness to compromise, all those things as a young man needs improvement, right? Because I knew, weakness, and yeah, and then as my perception changed, I look back and I'd be like, wow, this is the biggest strength. I want to be more like that. So, yeah, and same thing with physical work. Things I used to be impressed with, not so much anymore. Other things, like, oh, I value this now. Yeah. And that I'm not going to label what those are because it's a personal thing. But the idea that those change, valuing different things. Looking at my daughter's artwork is very mind-opening that way.
Thank you so much for this. I have a question about how you carry these sort of values and these things that you've learned into a work. I find that people that I've worked with before have many values, but when sort of met with maybe client expectations or things sort of shifting of their goals, those things sort of go out the window, it feels like, and so I'm wondering how you sort of carry that forward if you do.
Over time, it changes. You know, maybe painting a quick picture, you know, as a young craft person, these I had these high ideas. Everything perfect all the time. Everything had to, young person. No compromise. Anything. You see where that's going. Make a try. Have to make money. Client has a different budget than what you wish. Okay, take on the project. Put in 5 times the work. I have no responsibility. Just I need enough food to eat. I don't have an apartment and couch surfing, and squatting here and there. Works for a while. No compromise. Quality, no compromise. And then you add responsibility. Something has to give. Some people just quit woodworking and get, you know, a job where you get a paycheck, and then maybe someday go back to woodworking for fun. I never gave myself the option. if this is what I want to do all the time. I don't know how to do things part-time, but no interest in that. I've softened about that too. But back then it was just, there's no other option. I'm not giving myself an out, so I've got to work it out. So first, just the work for nothing, so I can still do the work I want to do, the work I believe is right, true, whatever it is. And then enough suffering will make you question what is really important. You know, what am I suffering for? Maybe it's worth it, and then that will give you energy to keep going that way. But maybe it's not. Maybe I can make some adjustments. Maybe I can get a machine or two, or whatever it is for your personal situation. If your responsibility increases really fast, you have to make certain decisions. If they're very slowly growing, then you have other options. Maybe you can hang in there in a certain way for longer. But depending on your level of commitment, desire, wish, addiction to a certain kind of work, you keep balancing what is more important to you and what's not. And having done enough of compromising, I cannot judge other people's decisions anymore. They have this thing. Everything I don't know about why they're doing things the way they are. It's their set of circumstance, their decision. Does that answer you?
Yeah.
There's as many paths as there are people. So you find your sweet spot. Oh, we still have 10 minutes or so.
So I'm curious about how you, like, what your experience is like in the distinction between, like, the presence during meditation and, like, what you described as, like, the presence during your work, you know, like 100% effort. Because I think, at least for me, a thing that I'm starting to shift with is, like, differentiating between that kind of focus and thinking. I think for a lot of people, they're the same thing. Like, does that make sense?
Yes. The most focused I've ever been involved no thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking has its place, but it's, in my experience, is more of a hindrance in doing really good work and as fast as you can, because the mind is too slow. Maybe it's my mind is too slow. I don't know, but it's not the right tool for me to use to be focused. Yeah. And how it echoes meditation is sad for my practice. It's the same. When there are thoughts there, when I realize there are thoughts, my mind has run off again. Then, recenter. In work, same. Resistance usually gives me a hint that I'm not fully here. I'm not something I lost track of because there's resistance. If I'm sawing, if you don't hold the saw with a grip, it's a loose grip. Yeah? Most of the time when I'm sawing, somebody could just pull the saw right out of my hand. With that loose of a grip, any resistance, I get immediate feedback. Yeah. I don't need to think about maybe I'm cutting to the left or the right, or maybe it needs to be resharpened. There's no thinking involved. It's just a complete being involvement, open to feedback, and a little resistance. minute adjustment, no resistance. Okay, so we're back straight. But it is not even a thought back straight. It's like
It's a feel.
resistance, no resistance.
Right.
Resistance, no resistance. Look for the sweet spot. Have that as your guide. It's not that there's no effort,
Right.
but it's that when you get to a space where you get the most out of what you put out, maximum impact for the minimum output of energy, that is the sweet spot. And if you can just focus on your work, all of these you can perceive. There are no secrets. Or,
Right.
my teacher's teacher would say that there are no secrets, only how much attention you pay to what you're doing. It's all there. It's all there out in the open. It's up for you to perceive it.
The saw wants to go straight.
Well,
It
if
does.
it's well sharpened,
Yeah, well, of course. But I mean,
but if the conditions are right,
Yeah.
if things are not going well,
it's,
right?
yeah.
So you adjust, and then all of a sudden it's going well. So, okay. So you must do this with some small. In the beginning, there are bigger adjustments, but as you move along, there are smaller and smaller adjustments. And when you see people pulling 5 microns, it's minute adjustments. But there's still adjustment. It's not like they don't have to pay attention to anything anymore. It's just that they're so dialed in to the minute difference. This will do it, this will do it. Maybe a couple more questions, if there are. Yeah.
Back to suffering
Suffering is.
and being in an apprentice role. You mentioned that there comes a time and point when you want to give up, or right. So I'm asking to kind of talk about when you hit that moment, and then being able to overcome it, and the learnings that brings to you for the next time.
Yeah. That's good. So, for me, most crushing was emotionally. Also, I lived in a city for the first time, which I had vowed not never to do. I was paying rent, which I also never wanted to do. But there were some other side issues that were not mortise and tenon and planing related, that I was letting gnaw at me. So there was that, my principles and all that stuff that I thought was myself. But that just made it harder. So from time to time, be like, when should I leave? Is he gonna do the favor to me to say like, you're out? Many times, actually, I wish that, so I didn't have to decide for myself. Yeah, it's just cowardly, but that's where I was. But I'd go through these cycles where, things are, maybe I'm doing okay a little bit, I'm learning, and then it says, it's so hard, is it worth it? It had been made very clear to me, if I left, there's no coming back to learn. I would be welcome back to work with, but I would never be an apprentice again. That relation would stop. And in my thinking about going somewhere else, having more fun, doing something, some kind of fun, I would come back to that and be like, well, no, I still want to learn. And this is the time. So just stay. most of the struggle, if not all of it, was from me. My teacher just had this wonderful work lined up. He never gave me more than I could handle, and then it's always just at the limit, but never more to set up for failure. That's kind of cruel. So everything was there set up. What I had to do is just tell myself it's worth it, and I still want to do it. Because I would think, well, okay, what if I leave now? Oh yeah, I want to be back here, but there's no coming back. So stay. So for me, that was the cycle. I still want what I want. Right? So when I seek to learn from this teacher, I had learned on my own quite a bit, and I could see in my lifetime I will only be able to learn so much. And so I was looking for a shortcut, so to speak. How about I learn from somebody who already learned from somebody who learned from, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people having done this similar work and tried everything. And here we find that these methods work really well. How about I start with that? And then if I find room to improve, then great. But this seemed like a good place to start. So there was that. And then from the day I met my teacher, it was 6 years of staying in touch until he had an opening. So all that to say that once I was there, and even though my commitment was shaky at times, it would come back to like, I still really want this, and then once I'm done with this will be a great foundation. And then I'll be able to go to client and feel honest looking at them in the eyes. Like, yes, I can do this. That sort of thing. Have something I wanted to have something to contribute also. And I thought this would be very substantial. So those few thoughts would then come back. Did I still want it? And they're also realizing it's acknowledging that something is difficult doesn't make me weak.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Until sometime in the apprenticeship, I would never acknowledge that I was having a hard time. That this was difficult. Because, I don't know, some strange convoluted pride or something, ego, something, completely useless to move forward. But kind of like trying to avoid making mistakes.
You just never one, right?
When you find out, tell me.
Maybe that, yeah.
Sure.
That, 2 questions? We only have time for 1 question.
2 minutes.
Yes.
2 minutes.
Last question.
Okay. Did you have, coming through your apprenticeship, did you have the confidence to do that? To like, say.
Sorry, the beginning again.
Sorry. When you finished your apprenticeship, did you get the confidence that you thought you would? Because you said you were going to have the confidence to look a customer in the eye and be like, oh I could do this.
Yeah, no, that, yes, that. But as you learn, as I learn, you see how much more you don't know. That's not a great confidence builder. But at the same time, as you work things out, the more things you work out, the more confidence you have that, yes, those things I don't know, I can probably work it out because I worked out these other things. And maybe a last note on that, we were talking this morning about student and teacher expectations is different in the West and in Japan. In terms of apprenticing, the schooling. I don't know how the Japanese schooling is. I can't compare. But in Japan, the responsibility of learning is on the student, and here it's often perceived as the teacher. The teacher gives, the student receives. In Japan, the teacher is there as an embodiment of what things can be. The student is there, that's their responsibility to learn, to work things out. They may be given hints from time to time. Actually, we saw that. So, yeah, and that's one way it's put.
Yeah.
But it's really there to foster self-learning for the longer-term benefits. If it's handed to you, you don't even remember half of it. If you've had to work it out yourself, man, those things, you don't forget those things. So,
And when you make a mistake, you even learn more.
so I remember my teacher essentially refusing out of consideration, kindness, compassion to the other apprentice who was there when I was there, to refuse to answer outright the question. Be like pushing the piece of paper back for some input. You try a little longer to work it out. The subtext was, I care too much about your education to take this away from you. You don't realize you're giving this away, but I know. So please.
I'm giving you the opportunity.
Yes, so
to
you
learn.
have the opportunity. Because one day I won't be here. I would love nothing else than for you to be self-sufficient and work it out for yourself. Not that you never ask for help, that's but you work it out on your own first, everything you can. Then I would be much more receptive to giving input if I see you've tried really hard. You just maybe a little hint here,